Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator with the University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a great show for you today. Look at the calendar. The end of April means No Mow May is right around the corner. But should we not be mowing our lawns, or should we be mowing our lawns in the month of May? Well, we will figure that out on this week's episode, but you know I'm not doing this by myself. I am joined, as always, every single week by horticulture educator Ken Johnson in Jacksonville. Hey, Ken.
Hello, Chris. I guess by the time people listen to this, it will be May, so I guess it will be time to continue no mowing or start mowing.
Ken, am I the only one? Does this happen to you when you hear that the month is about to change? Panic sets in, especially in the springtime.
Yeah, particularly this year. This year seemed to go by incredibly fast.
Yeah, I don't remember there being a spring. It was 80 some degrees yesterday. It was pushing 90, not quite, but it was pushing that here in Macomb. Everyone was super hot, and now it's like 60 degrees, and I got a hoodie on. I'm cold now. It's ruined me. We're practically in summer.
So I haven't gotten to build up my heat tolerance yet. Not that that's ever very high, but there's no gradual increase anymore.
No, there's not. It's just straight into the furnace of the year. Oh, well, maybe this is a timely topic then. We talk about No Mow May. No Mow May is supposed to be a thing that occurs in the springtime. And I've been marking spring weather by this annual event that I've been doing now since 2021. It's not a very long time, but it seems like every year this happens the first week of May. It is our first great environmental day. Never fails. We hit 90 that week. It's so hot. Kids are miserable. The speakers are just parched. I'm going to each station giving water to everybody. And it looks to be like it's going to be another hot one next week when we're doing this. So I don't know, Ken, is it getting hotter or is it just me?
Well, it seems like it's getting hotter. I guess the last several years seems like we're getting warmer earlier than quote unquote normal, but maybe this is the new normal.
Well, okay, I guess, well, let's see how this all plays into No Mow May. So first off, we do have an article that you wrote, Ken. We can link that below. So if folks, prefer to read more about this as opposed to listening to us patter on for hours, we will leave that link below in the show description. But Ken, what is No Mow May? Is it as I expect it to be?
Yes, it's exactly what the name says. So No Mow May. So the idea is we don't mow our lawns in the month of May. The idea behind this, so this started in the United Kingdom in 2019. As the idea was to help pollinator populations, because as we've been hearing for many years now, the populations are struggling, pollinator declines, all of that stuff. So if we don't mow our lawns in the month of May, that's supposed to increase the amount of quote unquote weeds that are blooming, providing a food source for these pollinators. So kind of the two, I guess, main goal. I think the primary goal is providing those food sources. And then a secondary goal that I think has been kind of tagged on over time is reducing that carbon footprint. Say the majority of people are probably mowing their lawns with gas-powered lawnmowers. And even if you're using an electric one, that electricity is coming from somewhere. In a lot of places, that's going to be coal, gas, some fossil fuel providing that electricity. So increased food for pollinators, and with the secondary benefit of reducing carbon footprint, at least for that month of May.
Well, and I can see how something like this would catch on and be popular, because you're just saying to folks, hey, don't do something. Skip doing this thing to help. How attractive that would be. Like, hey, if I want to save the pollinators, I just have to not do something. And yeah, I guess I see the appeal behind that, and maybe how that really did catch on. We do get asked a lot this time of year about the concept of No Mow May. Does it work? Is it something that is beneficial to pollinators. There actually have been studies that have been done. One in particular, it's titled No Mow May lawns have higher pollinator richness and abundances. This is an engaged community, or sorry, a subtitle is an engaged community provides floral resources for pollinators. So there have been studies that have been done. Now, interestingly, though, this study that I just read the title of, it has been retracted, finding out that there were probably some flaws here in some of that research or maybe methodology and how they went about that. And so where a lot of people used to point to this and say, hey, look, this is helping. Nope, not. We can't point to that anymore because that is no longer a published article. You can still find it online, but it would have a big red letters of retracted above the title if you're getting it, accessing it from the actual publisher.
Yeah, and basically that retracted means like basically this article never existed, type thing. If I remember right, I remember part of it was the species of bees they were identifying were not found. This is done in Wisconsin. Were not found in Wisconsin. Never have been. And I think there were some other pretty serious flaws that went along with it, which is why they ended up retracting it. So, yeah, like you said, that had been kind of the study people pointed to the most. So that's not there. And I'd say just because it's not there doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but there's just not necessarily any research here, at least in the United States, that I think that we know of, that points to it being a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we should just let people know, like, the idea behind No Mow May, it is a good thing. We want to try to help pollinators. We want to try to reduce our carbon footprint. So these are good things to strive for. And No Mow May does have a couple issues with it, though. And one of them, as if I can look out my window right now, can see that peak bloom for a lot of the flowering plants in my lawn, the dandelions, most certainly, they've already gone to seed in my lawn, and it is the end of April. So peak bloom has happened for dandelions in my lawn. Violets are blooming right now. I can see that creeping Charlie beginning to build up its energy to begin blooming here, so that won't be long. Clover will be blooming here not too long. And so we have a lot of plants that have already hit that peak in my lawn, at least here in Macomb, Illinois, in April. So should we, if this was a program that started in England with a different climate, maybe it's more better to say No Mow April, but I still have problems with that. I don't know, Ken, what do you think? No Mow April? What else is there?
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend on where you're at. So we're talking about Illinois here. Illinois is what, 300 miles long. So we've got what, 3.5 growing zones we're covering. So Southern Illinois, I mean, a lot of this stuff's done, in Jacksonville. Dandelions, there's still some dandelions blooming. Yeah, they're done for the most part. Creeping Charlie's blooming. The henbit and all those other early spring things are finishing up. So, and clover, depending on where you're at in the state, maybe May, late May, June, before that starts blooming. So you're missing that window for when you're not mowing. So, yeah, well, it may work, and I don't know the timing in the UK. I've never been there, and honestly never looked to see when things bloom there. But so it may work in the UK, the No Mow May. That timing may work for them, but it doesn't work here in Illinois and a lot of the Midwest, where the timing is off, I guess.
I would say, Ken, your complexion would lend well to a vacation in the UK, but you keep going down to the beach to Florida, so just keep that sunscreen on hand. uh, and the big thing, at least from like a lawn care or a plant health standpoint, is letting your turf grass grow and grow and grow. I mean, we're talking, depending on your species, Kentucky bluegrass, your fescues, ryegrass, any of that. I mean, we're talking anywhere it could get from like 6 inches tall, 10 inches tall, 12 inches tall. Some very vigorously grown, especially if you fertilize them, they grow up to 14, 15, 16, 18 inches tall. So you're talking almost 2 feet worth of grass, long grass. And What is occurring at that point? These are cool season grasses that we grow in Illinois. They are preparing for summer, for stress, for hot, dry weather. And this is the canopy that they think that they will have. And then we come along and we cut it all down from like 15 inches tall down to like 3 to 4 inches tall. And that is incredibly stressful to the plant. It has lost a ton of photosynthetic ability when we do that. It's not able to generate as much food as it had prior. It opens up that soil more, that base of that plant, which was formerly protected from kind of more harsher wind and sunlight. And when you, and this happens to me a lot, actually, it's happening to me right now. I have not been able to mow my grass for like a week, and it's like gone, it's a jungle out there right now. I know that when I mow it, it's going to look just puny, stunted. It's going to get off color. And we know that this is stressful to the plant. And so we have this what's called the 1/3 rule. And the idea here is to not remove more than 1/3 of the leaf blade at any one mowing. Now, this is a long established idea behind cutting vegetation, something that has been established since we started mowing hay fields, with scythes, and knowing that how much that we needed to cut off that wouldn't stunt or affect the plant so that it could continue to produce forage for animals. And so we know that this 1/3 rule is sort of a well established fact to use in our lawn mowing care, in our lawn care practices. So yeah, letting it grow way up high, chopping it down, very stressful to our lawns.
Well, like you mentioned, this is peak grass growing time right now. So, this time of year when it's maybe not getting into the almost 90, but whenever our more typical temperatures and we're getting rain like we normally would in the spring fairly often, you may be mowing your grass 2 or 3 times a week if you're going to do
Mhm.
that rule of the third. So to go a whole month, again, like you said, there's going to be some pretty drastic reductions to that. And if you've ever mowed a grass that's really tall, I mean, it's going to get kind of patchy when you cut it that low. You're gonna have to break up all those clippings, so that's going to be extra work there. And typically, we're recommending returning those clippings to the ground because that's going to be what, a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet or something like that. By returning that throughout the year, so you're gonna have to remove those clippings because they're going to be too long. They're not going to break down. You're going to smother the turf you do have. You're removing that nitrogen, so you're removing some of that nutrition that they're going to need. So I guess on multiple levels, letting it get that long is probably not a good idea. And or you're going to be slowly cutting it down, and that's going to take some time to do that.
Mhm.
If your
Be
mower can,
careful.
if you can even set your mower deck that high,
Yes, I know you have to. I don't
be
know
out
if
there
you
with
can.
scissors.
That's impossible. Yeah. Oh, be careful, Ken. You're starting to sound like a turf grass person here. So you might get asked to do a couple lawn talks here.
You've rubbed off on me.
Well, let's get back into your realm of things because let's talk pollinators. Let's talk about if we want to leave some of these flowering plants go in our lawns. Let's talk about dandelions. These are very common plants. I believe the common name for dandelion is the common dandelion. And so it's everywhere. It's originally hails from Eurasia, Europe, Asia, part of the world. It's pretty much established here in North America, all over the place, and frequents home lawns. It is probably the weed that most um, home lawn caregivers love to hate. They love to battle dandelion. They make tools to kill dandelion. There's a whole market for this thing, this plant. Um, so are dandelions, if they're bad for lawns, which I don't think they necessarily are, but are they good for our bees?
Let's say it depends. So,
Oh, it depends.
so when we think about I guess, our stereotypical ideal lawn, which are no varies depending on who you are. But we think about what we see in movies and stuff, nice green turf, no weeds. Um, in a situation like that where you've got dandelions blooming, that'd be good for pollinators because there's nothing else there for them to eat. That's a
Mhm.
floral resource, the nectar and the pollen, where nothing else is available. That's an option for stuff. For dandelions, like you said, they're native to Europe and Asia, not to North America. So they may not be necessarily the best for our native bee species. I think when we had Sri Lakshmi on a couple weeks ago, I don't remember if we talked about this in the recording or if this was before or after we were talking
Mhm.
about it. But sometimes the like honeybees and stuff, they're attracted to those European, Asian flower species because that's what their native range, not North America. So they're maybe preferentially go to those compared to our native species of flowers, and vice versa. So while they can provide resources, they may not be the best. And I even think for honeybees, the amino acids in the pollen, which is what they're going after, may not be the best, may not fit all their nutritional needs for them. Looking before this, we came across a paper, and I'll just read the abstract here. So there's definitely more detail in the article. So this is fitness costs and benefits of a non-native floral resource for subalpine solitary bees. So this study was done in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. So different bee species than we would have here, but would still probably, I would imagine, hold true to some of our native bee species. So bees that used at least some non-native Taraxacum, which is the genus for dandelions, pollen produced more potentially viable offspring, but larval survival was significantly reduced for bee larvae experimentally fed provisions dominated by Taraxacum pollen. Therefore, survival costs may negate the potential fitness benefits of early nesting, indicating that non-native flora resource use may act as an ecological trap for native bees. So basically, these dandelions are blooming earlier, which allows the bees to collect that pollen. They have more offspring. When the offspring are feeding on that pollen, it's for whatever reason not meeting that nutritional need, and they're not surviving as well. So while it can't support them, it's not giving them what they need. In the case of the bees in this study.
Yeah, it definitely there are some studies that do look at dandelion pollen. I came across this 1987 one, so it's older, but it hasn't been retracted. At least it's still current. Talking about how dandelion pollen is lacking certain amino acids when it comes to specifically honeybee nutritional diets. So we're not necessarily looking at native bees; we're looking at honeybees for that particular study. That it lacks certain amino acids, and reported that they have poor brood rearing capability when just exposed to dandelion pollen because of this amino acid deficiency. So it seems like it might maybe dandelions aren't the best thing to eat, but it is food for our pollinators. And you'll see lots of insects on dandelion flowers. I will say that when I'm walking through a field of dandelions, if you look down, you see all manner shape, size, species, of insects on those flowers.
Yeah, I see lady beetles, especially the
Hmm.
the native pink spot lady beetle on them a lot, because those and a lot of lady beetles will supplement their diet. So they're feeding on insects and stuff, but they will supplement their diet, especially early in the year with pollen, when a lot of these, what we would consider pest insects, aren't out yet. The populations aren't very high, so they're supplementing with pollen until I guess, their preferred food source is out. So it's not only pollinators, but other things. And like you said, yeah, something's better than nothing.
That's right. Well, I guess speaking of providing something, what can we do then to provide these early season pollen resources? Because that's really the concept of No Mow May. Is it's early in the growing season. There's not well, there's not as much blooming as say later on in the summer, and we just want to provide some resources for our pollinators. Uh, and our lawns, so many people have lawns. We have so much lawn in the United States. Um, I've heard all manner of estimates. Some people say it's as big as the state of California. I think the one that I've used, it's as big as the state of New York. I've heard it's as big as the region of New England. I don't know what to believe anymore, other than there's a lot. It's big, and every time I read one of these the ideas of or estimate of a size of the lawn, they're saying this is a conservative estimate. We're only taking into an account, certain areas of land, but we know that when we go out into the rural parts of the country, roadsides are being mowed, large swaths, large pasture areas are being mowed or kept as lawns and not necessarily as pasture. And so there's a lot of mowing going on. There's a lot of lawns that probably aren't being accounted for. So let's just say there's a lot. Um, and then the numbers vary on what a lot is.
Is it the largest crop in the U.S.?
It's the
If you want to
largest
call it a crop.
irrigated crop in the U.S. Yes. Um, we dedicate more resources, water resources, to our lawns than any other crop. So
So there you
it's a
go.
big deal.
Yeah. So yeah, so there's a lot of things we can do, and we think about it, if so, say we're going to do No Mow May because we want the pollinators. So June 1st comes around, we cut the grass, cut all the flowers off. Now what? If you don't have any other flowers, why'd you do it? Because they're not going to stick around. You don't have no food. So you've potentially drawn them in to some extent, but then you get rid of all their food, and they're gone. So I get,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So not only early in the season for this, but then continuing it throughout the year. So we have those resources. So it's, creating pollinator gardens, and there's all kinds of resources out there. And we've got the Illinois Pollinator website, which has got that plant selector tool. So you can go and select stuff for bloom color, bloom time, sun exposure, soil requirements, all that fun stuff. But for like early blooming stuff, so if we wanted to provide this stuff when we would be doing No Mow May or even before, so earlier this year we did a spring ephemeral podcast, all of that stuff, spring beauty, bluebells, trilliums, you name it, all those ephemerals would fit the bill there. Um, we start getting more prairie plants. I've got golden Alexanders in my yard is starting to bloom now, so that's an earlier one. Um, I'm trying to think some other real early, not necessarily ephemerals,
I
but
think prairie smoke is one of them that I see advocated for a lot. Early bloomer, for like prairie or a full sun setting. Um, and there's shooting star. That's also an ephemeral though. So, but yeah, there are some early blooming plants out there, resources, and we
trees.
can. Oh yeah, trees. Yeah, we didn't even talk about
It's like
trees.
overlook. We
You
always
gotta look
overlook
up.
the woody stuff, the trees and shrubs. Yeah, I mean we've got all kinds of spring blooming trees. Those redbuds, dogwood, magnolias, maples. We're real early in the year. Um, Shrubs. I know my spice bush.
Hmm.
I think it's probably done by now, blooming. But there's, I guess, a lot of other things that are blooming that are not herbaceous. Again, and as I just demonstrated, I'm guilty all the time of not thinking of the woody stuff. But that, I mean, when you think about the trees and stuff, those are big plants. They produce a lot of flowers, a lot of resources. Um, one, one redbud tree, which isn't a terribly big tree, is going to provide a whole heck of a lot more floral resources than, you know, 30, 40 bluebells.
Hmm. Oh, I agree. Oh, I can't believe we almost skipped over trees there. Thank goodness, Ken. Um, Interesting. So before the show, we were talking about, looking at some of the research, and also I told a story about the two entomologists having an argument at a program I was at, about the the use of pollinators in wind pollinated plants. Specifically, they were talking about shade trees. And it was just really interesting watching two very smart people argue with each other. Um, you can go on YouTube and find two dumb people argue all the time, but watching two smart people, that's quite a show. It's hard to find sometimes. I don't know. Can you find it on here, Ken? I'm not sure. One smart person talking to a dumb guy in Macomb.
Well, I don't know if we've really ever argued on the show.
Oh, let's get to
Maybe
it.
maybe that'll be next week.
Next week, I'll find something that you disagree with, and I'll argue the counterpoint, even if I agree with you. Make it interesting. But anyway, these two entomologists, they're talking about, in a lack where there is lacking pollen resources that are typical that a pollinator would visit. When those are lacking, especially in like an urban or developed area, if there are shade trees nearby that are flowering in bloom, even if they are wind pollinated, pollinators will go to those flowers and collect that pollen. Because it's still pollen, it's still protein, it's still food for them. And it was just interesting listening to the repertoire, because the other one was just saying, like, we don't have enough research to say this explicitly, like these trees are important for pollinators, because we just don't know. Like, we need to do more looking into this before we can go out and start shouting to the world, our wind pollinated shade trees are important to bees, and butterflies and moths and all the other pollinators out there, even though I'm sure you can eye a red maple. And I have heard the tree itself just buzzing, or not a red maple, I'm sorry, an ash tree. I don't know what I'm saying. Been underneath a green ash. That's what I'm trying to say. And the tree itself has just been buzzing. Like there's like a hum, and you just know that there's insects up there doing their thing. And that's just there's just a lack of pollen resources. They're turning to what they can.
Yeah, anecdotally, I have in my backyard a sweet corn.
Hmm.
I always, I usually see several bees on that. I mean, I've still got quite a few flowers in my yard, but they're still visiting that and collect. I can see them collecting pollen off of those plants. So, like I said, you can't necessarily. Again, I've never really searched for this, but I don't think there's a whole lot of studies, if any, that really looks at those wind pollinated plants and their utilization for pollen.
Yeah, and I think that was just the big debate. Someone just the going back and forth on things they kind of know already, but nothing that we can back up with that scientific evidence. So maybe they went off and did the research. Let's hope they did.
Yeah,
Just haven't published it yet. Oh, there is one thing that I do this every year, because I have my patches in my lawn where I know I'm going to have a lot of violets. So there's a part of my lawn. There's going to be a ton of violets there. I have my clover area. I've got my creeping Charlie area. So I have these different patches, and when they are in full bloom, so like right now the violets are in full bloom, I just don't mow them. And it's April, so we're not in May. It's going to get mowed in May, because the blooms are going to start waning, but also the grass is going to start growing over it and choking out those violets. And I kind of want that foliage to be open more to the sunlight so that it can photosynthesize and give me more violets. Um, so in a way, I'm kind of making it so that the grass is not as competitive to the violets. If I would let it grow a little bit taller, I might be able to choke out those violets. So hint, hint, people wanting to control these plants in their lawn, just mow higher, and you'll create a more competitive grass plant, to something like a dandelion or a violet. But anyway, I do what I call selective mowing. I used to call it drunken mowing, because it looks like what kind of pattern is this guy following? But I don't say that anymore, because I don't want people to think that I'm like belligerently drunk mowing the lawn, in random patterns. So yeah, I mow selectively. I avoid some of those patches when they're in full bloom, except for, well, Creeping Charlie, I'll hit that one, because you can be mean to Creeping Charlie and it doesn't care. It's okay with it. It'll just bloom again and keep spreading.
no, you'll be back. Yeah, another thing, so you got selective. You could also look at mowing less frequently. So maybe not going a whole month, but going a week or a couple weeks in between mowing. So there was some research done in Massachusetts where they cut lawns at 1 week, 2 week, and 3 week intervals just to see and looked at the number of flowers and the number of pollinators visiting those. They found that lawns mowed every 2 weeks had more bees present than those mowed every week. And then lawns that were mowed every 3 weeks had more flowers, but fewer bees. And there could be several reasons for that. One, it could have been grasses are getting taller, obstructing some of the flowers. They were collecting these bees by pan traps. So their pans, they're painted yellow or blue. They stick them out there. Well, it could have been there's so many flowers they weren't going to those pan traps.
Hmm.
So there's a couple reasons why there could have been fewer bees, at least the bees that they collected and stuff. So, but again, mowing it less frequently, you let some of those flowers bloom, and you got those resources for those bees potentially.
Come to think of it, I did a program the other day. Um, the idea of No Mow May came up. A question was asked, and this person wanted to do it. And so I said, "Well, do you have any weeds in your lawn?" And they said, "No, no, I don't have any weeds." Like, well, then there's no reason to do it because the weeds are the flowers that the bees and pollinators will come in and visit. So if your lawn is immaculate, um, there's no reason to skip mowing the lawn. Uh, like Ken said, just carve out lawn and put in some pollinator gardens.
Yeah, we don't have to get rid of all lawn. We've talked about it
Hmm.
before on the show. There's purposes for lawns, especially if you want to recreate in your backyard or front yard, depending
Hmm.
if you're a front yard or backyard person. A lot of our other ground covers are not going to have the wear tolerance that turf is going to have. So there's nothing wrong with having some turf. Do we need as much turf as we have in a lot of our lawns? Probably not. But you don't have to rip everything out and do all pollinator stuff.
There you go. That's the message. Drive it home. Mow high, mow often, keep those blades sharp. Every time we're talking about lawns, we have to say that. It's in our contract that we don't have.
Richard made us promise
He
before he
did.
resigned.
Yes, he did. He said, promise, promise it. So we do.
I guess so. We talked about um, providing flowers, but again, going a little further, we get into garden cleanup and maintaining those our pollinator plantings or what have you. So not being in a real big hurry to clean up, leaving stuff lay in the fall or the winter for that overwintering habitat. Not being in too big of a hurry to clean up in the spring. Again, ideally, we're waiting until, and most of the guidelines are mid-May. Stuff may still be coming out throughout the year, but majority of stuff is going to probably be out by mid-May. And we are cleaning it up. If you are cleaning it up early, putting it in an out of the way area, not shredding it or composting it in case there is still something overwintering in stems on leaf material, uh, what have you. So again,
Mhm.
it's great to provide the flowers, but we need to provide that other habitat too. I guess that's the next level, is providing that other habitat, the overwintering areas, nesting habitat, and not eliminating those places from our landscapes.
Yeah, I would say in the most visible spots in my yard, I I cut the stems from last year and I just drop them on the ground right next to where I cut them. It'll break down eventually. Free compost. And if there are any insects in there, hopefully they'll, utilize those stems. Maybe someone can come back and utilize them even still. You can even cut your stuff a little higher. So you have like 12, 18-inch cut stems that usually gets masked by that foliage that grows up then that year. Um, yeah, there's no one way to do all of this. It's your yard. Um, it's you have permission to do things that make you happy, so long as it doesn't harm other people. So that's important, or the greater environment. So, yeah, the old adage of do no harm. Yes.
Yes, just keep it maintainable enough that the city or township or whoever's not going to come after you.
So you don't have to pay any legal fees. Mhm. That's the goal. But still pushing a lot of that sedges and violets. I love violets. That is one of my favorite plants. People hate that plant too, but I love it in the lawn. I love it in my garden bed. I love it in like landscape beds as a ground cover. Um, the whole yard can be covered in violets, and I would be fine with it.
Yeah, good chunk of my yard is violets.
Hmm. Do
I
you
do
have
still,
a favorite lawn plant?
yeah, as long as it's green.
There you go.
and
You,
and not nimble well. For whatever reason,
oh,
I don't like that one for whatever reason. I don't know.
I'm coming around on Nimblewill. It's everywhere in my lawn, and it's taking over so
My
much.
mine's getting to that point where I'm going to have to start liking it because I don't dislike it enough to do anything about it.
There you go. Yes. Well, that was a lot of great information about No Mow May. Well, the Good Growing Podcast is a production of University of Illinois Extension, edited this week by Ken Johnson. Ken, thank you for both editing and hanging out with me today, discussing the virtues of No Mow May, but also pointing out a lot of the flaws that are associated with this idea. And again, maybe we just need to bump it back to like mid-March to mid-April. No Mow, but that doesn't roll off the tongue so easily as No Mow May does.
Yeah, I'd say just be lazy. Much longer. Cut it before you get in trouble, but it's okay to let it grow a little bit longer. And you don't have to have the perfect lawn if you don't want to. If you don't want to have it.
That's right. If it's green, it's good, as Ken would say.
Yes, and thank you as always, and let's do this again next week.
Oh, we shall do this again next week. The horticultural hijinks continues the summer of 2025. I say summer just because it's so hot, or has been so warm. It's still spring, folks, but my mind is already propelled to tomatoes and peppers and all the goodies that are just around the corner. So listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, watching. And as always, keep on growing. Well, we'll figure that out this week. Okay.